this exact moment is just almost impossible to believe. So wild times are before us. I can't tell if everyone's amassing here because they're ready to come up, or we waiting for magic words? If so, magic words. Come up. Let's go. Here it is. There he is. There it is. Welcome. Mike, welcome.
I like this guy. I like this guy right here. It's good passion. That's a passion this country needs right here, and that's a passion crypto needs.
All right, well, gentlemen, there we go. My man. Okay, well, first of all, guys, thank you so much for joining all of us. I know everybody here is very passionate about what's happening in terms of the change with the way that money is being handled. And so Bitcoin being the progenitor of all of that. Eric, I want to start with you. So you could help America in a million different ways right now. What is it about Bitcoin that's so important that you wanted to start there?
Very simple. I think it's the greatest asset of our time. I really do. And by the way, this is coming from a guy who's a hard asset guy, right? I mean, we built the greatest hotels around the world. We built the greatest casinos around the world. We know buildings like this very, very well. This is my business. It's what I do every single day. We're in the hospitality space. And I truly think that Bitcoin is the greatest complement to hard assets of anything that's out there. And guys, my story, and I tell this story all the time, but we got debanked like we were dogs based on the fact that we wore a hat, very similar to your Make Crypto Great Again hat, but Make America Great Again hat. And we were debanked by everybody. We were debanked by Bank of America, by JP Morgan Chase. We were debanked by First Republic. We were debanked by everybody. And we found crypto as the greatest solution, and we started questioning why the big banks even need to exist. And I truly mean that. There is nothing that the big banks do that can't be done better, cheaper, faster, and more transparently based on blockchain technology. So I love Bitcoin, and Mike and Asher and I founded, I think, what's going to be the greatest Bitcoin company anywhere in the world, certainly in the country. We're mining Bitcoin every single day at roughly 50 cents on the dollar to the spot price of Bitcoin. We're doing it using American energy out of West Texas. We just listed ourselves on the NASDAQ. We went public in 5 months and 3 days. It was the fastest listing in the history of the NASDAQ from what we're told. And every single day we're climbing. And a really, really cool story. A couple hours ago, the Winklevosses, everybody knows them in here, Tyler and Cameron, good friends of ours. We just passed, they were early stages as investors in American Bitcoin, and as of about 2 hours ago, we passed their Bitcoin holdings, so this company is skyrocketing right now. We're having a great time. But I truly believe that Bitcoin is digital gold. I think it's one of the great assets of our time. And I truly believe we're on the 1 yard line, right? I mean, a couple years ago, you couldn't even get it. It was impossible. You had to go through DeFi channels, you had to have ledgers. It was really, really hard. It was punitive for a lot of people. Every single day, there's another way to get it, whether it's Fidelity or Schwab or 401ks or IRAs or ETFs or buying exposure through companies like ours that mine it and obviously purchase it every single day, or the MicroStrategies of the world, etc. For the first time, people who are in the equity markets can buy into Bitcoin and they can buy into cryptocurrencies in a way that they would never have been willing to do before. And I think that's an amazing thing for our industry. I think it's an amazing thing for Bitcoin. And frankly, I think it's an amazing thing for the world. So guys, I'm all in. We're all, the Trump family is all freaking in on cryptocurrency. And by the way, America is going to lead the way in terms of crypto. China would have, the Middle East would have, America is going to lead the way in the financial revolution.
All right, so that seems to resonate. So what is step one? As you guys make companies out of this, what is it that you can do as corporations to ensure that America leads the way?
I think we're doing it already with American Bitcoin. We're building data centers here in the US. We're using energy made here in the US. A lot of our facilities are in Texas, where you have some of the lowest cost electricity in the US. And so for us, what's really important is not just the belief in Bitcoin itself, but the infrastructure that actually allows it to run. And so with Bitcoin, Bitcoin is secured through the network. It's a proof of work token. And so it's secured by these computers running SHA-256 that validates every transaction that happens on the network. And we want that compute to be here in the US. We want that compute to be stored here so that we don't have it in just places like China or other areas. And so for us with American Bitcoin, it was really important that we continue to build and expand compute here and strategic to the overall macro and worldwide adoption of Bitcoin as well.
And we're supporting American companies. We use American custody, we use American platforms. As America holds its leadership in crypto, that's where you become a platform and the rest of the world comes to you. And you dictate terms. You're a maker, not a taker. With our KYC and AML, FATF is leading the travel rules globally. Other companies, other countries are adopting our policies and our regulations. People come to buy American ETFs. BlackRock's IBIT, $100 billion. That's not all from American buyers, that's international buyers. Mubadala, UAE's sovereign, spent $400 million buying a US ETF product. When you're the leader, everyone comes to you.
And so there's a couple things. One, on the hash rate, we already control here in the US about 40 to 50% of the hash rate. What do you guys consider the magic number? Is it 100%? Is it you want it to be distributed in some amount around the world? What's the sweet spot?
No, I think that's a good range today. Obviously, hash rate continues to come online around the world. You don't want a single country owning 100%. That takes away from the decentralized aspect of Bitcoin. And so having a large portion of the network here, so we know that there aren't foreign actors that have over 51% and they can have an attack onto the network. And so it's important to have scale here, but it's also important for it to be decentralized across the world so people continue to trust this decentralized asset.
How important is regulation going to be to other countries trusting a company like American BTC? Is that part of the strategy of why other countries would want to partner with somebody like you versus somebody else?
Well, the beauty of American Bitcoin is we're a public company. We have to adhere to public standards. We are PCAOB, we're audited, we're Sarbanes-Oxley, we're SOC 2 compliance, we have proof of reserves, everything is audited. You don't have to take our word. It's all audited and with proof of reserves.
And by the way, that's where America's leading the way right now. I mean, we had an incompetent president 9 months ago in this country, right? I mean, anybody who believed in cryptocurrency, they'd throw them in jail. I mean, they were debanking everybody. I was getting debanked because we wore a hat that said "Make America Great Again." These guys are getting debanked because they believed in the future of finance, right? All by a corrupt administration. Now all of a sudden we have an administration in this country that actually wanted to set the guardrails for what crypto was and what it is and how it's going to function. And the beauty of that is everybody is adopting the American standard. The American standards have been, no one wanted to go first. America led the way. America went first. And now everybody around the world is following. What we have a great advantage of in the US is we've got the best rule of law. We have some of the lowest energy prices. Like, go try and mine Bitcoin right now in Scotland. Good luck. You know, every Bitcoin would probably cost you $300,000, $400,000 to mine because of the cost of energy. So we have the regulations, we have the framework, we have the governmental support, we have an administration that wants to lead the way, we have the energy prices to do so, and you see the entire world following what America is doing, and they're trying to step in behind us. But it's a beautiful framework that we have, and America is in such a unique position to win this battle.
Well, I'm glad you said win this battle. So when I look at the energy onboarding in China versus the rate at which we're bringing on energy here in the US, we're getting our asses handed to us. So how do we deal with that? Between AI, what's going on in Bitcoin, we're going to need as much energy as we can get.
Well, I mean, listen, I don't want to turn political for a second, but yeah, we were absolutely having our asses handed to us because every single day there was a prohibition against us taking the best, cleanest natural gas out of the ground and using oil. And, you know, I mean, we went from energy independent under my father's first term to energy dependent. We started importing oil and gas again between 2020 and 2024, and now all of a sudden we're energy independent again. And we have a little saying in our family, drill baby drill, and that's exactly what we need. Guys, energy is everything. And it's not just oil and gas. I mean, that's one form of energy, but we need solar and we need nuclear. My father put in this policy that was, if you want a nuclear permit, and obviously you're qualified, we will give you the permit in a 2-week period of time. You know how many companies were out there that were trying to build nuclear power plants? And they would wait 8, 10, 12 years. They would put $15 billion into the permitting process, and at the end of it, they would be denied their permits, right? It's so sad, and yet China is building reactor after reactor after reactor, and China is building coal power plants after coal power. And by the way, so is the Middle East. We were going to lose the war on crypto. We were going to lose the war on manufacturing. We were going to lose the war, certainly, on AI, which these guys know better than anybody. Hut 8 knows better than anybody. We were going to lose that war. And now all of a sudden, we have a country that is 100% committed to being the energy superpower capital of the world. You track GDPs. I want anybody to look at a chart of GDPs around the world, right? GDP growth goes like this when you have cheap energy. GDP growth goes like this when you have expensive energy. In fact, it goes the opposite way when you have expensive energy. That is why Western Europe is absolutely dying. That is why the Middle East has had explosive growth, and so many other places. And that's why America is back right now, because we're prioritizing energy, which is the building blocks of absolutely everything we do.
So, Asher, tell me, so Eric was just saying that you guys know AI better than anybody. How does AI fit into the pipeline of what you guys are doing? And if you don't mind, give a quick breakdown of why Hut 8 wanted to get together with American BTC.
So at Hut 8, we were one of the first companies that owned Bitcoin on the balance sheet back in 2017 as a publicly traded company. And as we continue to grow, we grew a larger and larger energy infrastructure platform. We own power plants, we own data centers, we own Bitcoin, we had a mining business. When we all got together, Eric was building a business called American Data Centers, and we started talking about Hut 8, our passion for Bitcoin, for real estate, for infrastructure, for energy. And we said, you know what, let's bring these things together, and let's have one business that's focused on energy infrastructure, that's focused on data center infrastructure. A lot of that today, obviously, is built to support AI functions and all the growing demand there. And let's spin out our whole Bitcoin mining business and our Bitcoin business into a company called American Bitcoin that merged with American Data Center. So American Bitcoin was the formation of a company that Eric had owned in our Bitcoin business from Hut 8. So today, Hut 8 manages all the data centers that host the Bitcoin mining servers. We run the energy infrastructure, the data center infrastructure. We're heavily focused on AI and AI growth within the US today. We have a lot of campuses that we're building within that sector. And so we have 2 publicly traded companies now on the NASDAQ. Hut 8, which is long energy, and American Bitcoin, which is long Bitcoin.
Okay, but what are you using the AI for specifically?
The AI is being used by all the AI labs you can think of today. So we actually, the customers of those data centers are the largest customers and tech companies in the world that are running these platforms.
Basically, it's a pure infrastructure play.
That's right.
So if I were going to map what you guys do, you're good at infrastructure, making sure the stuff is there. That's where you guys found them. Hey, we have a thing that we needs really tight, efficient infrastructure. Let's partner up.
That's right, exactly.
Okay.
And that's why, if you look at the last quarter, our first quarter financials came out from American Bitcoin. And if you think about it, we started the company April 1st of this year. This last quarter, in a 3-month period, we had over $60 million of revenue at about a 56% gross profit margin. That's not too bad for a company that's less than a year old. And so growing extremely, extremely quickly. Bitcoin per share is growing. Our underlying economics are strong. And so right now it's continuing to work on those fundamentals and continue to grow Bitcoin per share for our shareholders of the company.
Eric, you said that you think of Bitcoin as digital gold. How do you want to see the average American citizen or world citizen using Bitcoin?
Well, you know what's amazing, guys? Bitcoin is such a great asset in America, but it's actually even a better asset in a certain way for people outside of America. I mean, think if you live in one of these countries. Think if you live in Zimbabwe, where you have massive inflation, right? You have a crap currency. You have a currency that's been, inflating effectively 1,000%, over the course of a long time. You get your paycheck. That paycheck the next day is gone. Inflation just robbed you of the money you had worked. Congratulations, you use your smartphone, you go in, you buy Bitcoin. Right? Isn't that what you would do if you had a currency that wasn't stable? And you have that all over the world. Look at Argentina before Millie. You had the same thing. You had 60, 80, 100% inflation year over year. Would you like to have your money disappear on you, or would you like to take your money, put into an asset that's historically growing on average of roughly 70% a year over year over the last 10 years, and have that asset grow, as opposed to having your money just disintegrate from under you? That's the financial freedom that Bitcoin gives. Now, I don't think there's any asset class in America that has outperformed Bitcoin. I just go back over the last decade. Name an asset class that's even come close to the performance of Bitcoin, and you won't find it. And I believe we're in the infancy for all the reasons I said before. You know, most specifically, the fact that, first of all, people understand crypto more than ever. You know, people are probably less trusting of governments around the world right now than they've ever been before. You know, and people actually have a way to buy cryptocurrency for the first time that's, you know, not hard to do, that doesn't put up roadblocks, that doesn't take computer scientists in order to figure out, right? So, you know, you have an asset class that's really more accessible to anybody. But if you look at Bitcoin around the world, I would argue that it's actually financial freedom to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions, many billions of people around the world who live in countries where you can't trust your government, you can't trust your banking system, you have a currency that's, you know, destabilized, it hasn't been a great store of value. You have fraud, you have waste, you have abuse, you have theft, you have financial institutions that want to have their fingers in the honey jar every single day. Bitcoin solves all of that, right? I mean, Bitcoin is worldwide, it's 24/7. You know, it's protected by unthinkable amounts of power. It's decentralized. It can't be stolen. It can't be robbed. It can't be confiscated. It can't be inflated. In fact, in a certain way, it's a deflationary asset. It's capped. You know, Asher and I use this example all the time, but you know, if gold ever went to $50,000 an ounce, we would probably break down this building. We would mine the gold out of the columns in this building because there's a little flakes in concrete. You would find a way to find more gold. You would go deeper. You would mine in, you know, less advantageous, you know, more expensive areas to mine because the price went up. So guess what? You know, your supply would go up. That can't happen with Bitcoin. You have 21 million. There will never be. You actually have a little bit less because some has been lost over the years, but you'll never have 21 million in one. And it's the only asset that you can say that of. You know, if gold ever went to $50,000 an ounce, Elon would fly spaceships to some planet, and he would find damn gold and he would bring it back, and there's plenty of it in the universe, right? He would bring that back. Bitcoin, there will always be 21 million, and that's my friend again, I love him very much. The greatest spirit in South Florida right there. Love you, buddy.
All right, so Mike, one challenge to that would be you've got quantum on the horizon. I think people are right to look at that and say, at what point does this become a problem? What do you think the Bitcoin community needs to do in order to have a strategy for a post-quantum world?
Well, the Bitcoin community is agile, and there's been a ton of great progress on quantum. But if I were to just draw some numbers to quantum of where we are compared to where we need to go before quantum can be used for applications, today we're probably at about 100 qubits. Before we can use quantum computing for applications to break encryption, it's often said that we have to accelerate to about 1 million qubits. And it took us about a decade, 2 decades to go from 10 qubits to 100. Obviously this is exponential, but we're still years away before we're hitting that 1 million qubit mark.
Okay, so right now it's purely it's a tomorrow problem. Are you purely going to look at the qubit question, or are you going to look at how many integers it can crack at a certain rate?
Well, there are a lot of applications that quantum is going after. SHA-256 is, I don't believe SHA-256 is high on qubits research priority. However, if quantum makes improvements on being able to actually crack encryption, I see the Bitcoin community getting together and hard forking to a quantum resistance protocol.
I think the other thing too is you can either have a nefarious actor who wants to go in and try to crash the system, or someone that says, hey, I'm going to go and try to mine all the future Bitcoin. The problem with the second is the value of Bitcoin is SHA-256, the network, the store of value. And if you go and break that, you're actually destroying the value itself. And so it's really, do you have a nefarious actor or not? And I think, thankfully right now, there's not that many people with access to this technology. And so you don't have that group that exists out there. And then to Mike's point, you'll have a majority of the network come to consensus that what is a technology that allows us, if this becomes an issue, to be able to have a chain that is able to remediate against it.
There's one other thing to add in here. If Bitcoin goes down, right? I was a guy who didn't understand this world until 4 or 5 years ago, and I've spent a lot of time studying it. If you look at our facilities where we mine Bitcoin in West Texas, I mean, this is a building that's 600 yards long. It's got, you know, roughly what, 2%, 2.5% of the total worldwide mining of Bitcoin under it, and it uses about 2.5 times the power of the city of White Plains, right? And this is all over. Are you from White Plains? Okay, so it's a big city, right? Big city. That's a lot of power that you use to effectively mine 2.5% of the world's power. Think about how much power that is protecting an ecosystem. If Bitcoin went down, congratulations, the Pentagon's gone. Congratulations, Amazon's gone. Congratulations, Google's gone. JP Morgan didn't stand a chance because the energy infrastructure used to protect the network is so far greater than the resources of any of these entities or any of these. I mean, if you look at the overall, one of these days we should actually go down and chart this number. But I mean, the energy used to safeguard Bitcoin would be that of major countries around the world, right? And you would need that kind of energy to otherwise kind of break the system. And you don't think that quantum computer wouldn't have already taken out Bank of America? You don't think that, you know, Walgreens and your Amazon account would have already got? I think Bitcoin would actually be the last in a series of entities to fall in the event that you really had a malicious actor trying to go after, you know, great systems and great computer.
The Bitcoin network is probably about 10 Portugals. 10 Portugals or 4 to 5 Manhattans in terms of the energy footprint.
It's a lot. All right, so in terms of the treasury, how do you guys think about are you gonna run a Bitcoin treasury strategy? Are you gonna go full Michael Saylor? What's the strat?
Well, we're the best of both worlds. We're not just a treasury company. We're not just a mining company, but we're the best of both. So the mining side of the business allows us to accumulate Bitcoin at a significant discounted spot, about 50 cents on the dollar. And on the treasury side, we're a public company that can benefit from all the tools that are made available to us, such as issuing converts, being able to monetize the volatility, and swapping our equity when it's a lower cost to bringing on more Bitcoin. The metric that matters the most is our Bitcoin ownership per share. And we've been increasing our Bitcoin ownership per share since our inception. When we went public just last month in September, we announced that we went public with 2,400 Bitcoin. To Eric's point, we just surpassed Gemini today, and we're holding over 4,000 Bitcoin. The Bitcoin ownership per share for our shareholders have been monumentally increasing.
I think another thing to think about as well is why own American Bitcoin? Why not just buy Bitcoin? Why not just buy an ETF? And the way I think about it is this. If I go on to Robinhood and I say I'm gonna go buy some Bitcoin on the crypto exchange that they have on there, great. If Bitcoin goes from $100,000 to $200,000, I just double my money, right? If it goes down to $50,000, then I just lost half of my money. Same thing with an ETF. You have kind of that exposure through the ETF if you're not owning it directly. What we're focusing on at American Bitcoin is how to give you a Bitcoin yield. And so if you own one Bitcoin, over time, you can own more as we're running these different active strategies and we're compounding your money. And so if you think about it, the metric people like to think about all the time is like, what is your MNAV, which is what premium are you trading to the overall amount of Bitcoin that you have. I think that metric is a bit flawed. What people should be looking at is, what is your Bitcoin per share? And what premium am I willing to pay on top of that because I believe in the growth story here? And so if you think about it on like a fiat kind of world, that's just basically EPS, right? What's your earnings per share? What P multiple do you trade at? And basically people give companies like Tesla a much higher multiple because they believe in the future of the business and what it can drive. And so you figure out, okay, at what multiple do I feel like I want to buy this because I believe in what it can do, and then you just hold it. And over time, we do a lot of work, whether it be through mining and active treasury management. We have this whole ecosystem layer in which we're going to utilize the brand to create product offerings to drive additional cash flows to the business to go and buy more Bitcoin. And so between now and a decade from now, Doesn't matter where the share price is, underlying that share is a Bitcoin, and how much can we increase that underlying share, and you'll ride the volatility of Bitcoin if it goes up and down, but most importantly, you're getting a yield on that, and today you can't really get a yield on Bitcoin, right? You just buy it and you hold it. You can't just go and put it into a bank account and say, I'm gonna pick up 4% on this Bitcoin and I'm gonna compound that, and so that's really what we're focusing on, and that's why we have built this business.
Okay, so one of the interesting things about the narrative that Bitcoin is gold is that gold doesn't have nearly the volatility of Bitcoin. For most people, the volatility in Bitcoin is the juice. It's why it's so attractive. Do you guys see Bitcoin losing its volatility over time? And if it does lose its volatility, does it gain in importance just in a new way, or does it lose its importance?
Well, volatility is not risk. Volatility is often misunderstood as risk, but risk is permanent loss of capital, because on the other side of volatility is opportunity. And the volatility of Bitcoin has come in over the cycles. Previous cycles, 2 cycles ago, Bitcoin implied vol was 3 digits in the hundreds, last cycle 70, and now vol for Bitcoin sits around 40. Tech stocks listed mainboard US equities is around 30, 40 as well. Bitcoin is becoming less volatile as there are more institutional players, as there's more depth in derivatives, and there's more trading volume. So we do see volatility compress over time.
But do you want that? Do you want to see the volatility come down?
As volatility comes down, I think we'll see a lot more institutional players be able to carry Bitcoin on their balance sheet. One of the challenges that holding Bitcoin in a larger quantum as a percentage of a portfolio for a lot of wealth managers, money managers, is they can't take the quarter-to-quarter, mark-to-market volatility of Bitcoin. But the other side of this is if you actually look at the math, even a 5% allocation of Bitcoin against treasuries tremendously boosts your yield. 5%, over the last 10 years, if you held 5% Bitcoin and 95% cash, you went from a negative inflation-adjusted CAGR to 10%, or roughly 10%. And obviously that increases as you increase your allocation from 5%, 10%, 20%. But as the volatility comes down, we'll see more institutional capital be able to come in.
And that's why one analysis we ran internally was some years Bitcoin is up, some years Bitcoin is down, right? That goes through the volatility. But to the permanent loss piece, we looked at a 5-year trailing average. And on a 5-year trailing average, if you held Bitcoin for 5 years and you didn't sell it, you were always up, and the annual compounded rate of return was about 25%. That was at the low side. On the high side, obviously, much higher. Over the last decade, I believe on average, around 70% annual compounded return on average, right? And so I think duration is really important. You should not own Bitcoin if you might need that money in 6 months or a year, because as volatility exists, you have to have the ability to manage through duration. And I think that's where people get hurt is they buy it, they don't hold it, and they go up. And Bitcoin is very different than other cryptos as well, because there's a limited supply. It is a store of value that people have accepted and adopted as well, and not all cryptos are created equally in the same either. And so I think as we think through kind of the business, people should own Bitcoin, they should own an ETF, they should own American Bitcoin if they're willing to put that capital in and truly hold it as a long-term store of value. And then as you allow for duration to happen, and in 5 years you're like, oh, look, I'm up X amount of money, I want to take it off the table, then so be it. But it's definitely not for the faint at heart. And cycle over cycle, volatility is getting lower and lower. And you saw that recently with some of the kind of the cyclicality this year as well. And as volatility gets lower, your cost of capital will get lower. You might be able to borrow against it at a bank. You might be able to use that money to, let's say you have $1 million of Bitcoin, you might be able to pull $500,000 to go buy a house or whatever it may be. With volatility, no one's going to lend against that because it becomes harder. And if they do lend against it, the cost of capital is higher. They'll take a lower LTC and so forth.
All right, Eric, as somebody who seems legitimately interested in how Bitcoin can help the average person, right now in America there's a very distressing stat, which is 10% of Americans own 93% of the assets. I think this is a big problem given that inflation over the last 5 years, you stretch it out, it's 25%. Obviously it's come way down, but it's still a very damaging thing over time. how would you like to see Bitcoin be used by the average person to essentially get on the asset ladder?
Well, listen, we believe in investors, we believe in great assets, and great assets build great wealth. And I truly believe that Bitcoin's a great asset. That's why I'm buying it, and that's why I think some of the wealthiest people around the world, some of the wealthiest countries around the world, the biggest sovereign wealth funds around the world, some of the biggest Fortune 500s around the world now are all treasuring Bitcoin because they believe it's a great asset and it has so many great inherent principles to it. So I want to see people get involved in cryptocurrency. As I said before, I think we're on the 1 yard line. Right now, cryptocurrency, as just an overall kind of crypto market, is roughly where the internet was in 1999. Think about that. That's how much growth you have ahead of us. Right now, I have a great kind of example of a friend of mine. He runs one of the biggest bank in the country. He runs their private wealth office in Greenwich, Connecticut. One of my best friends, he came up to me 18 months ago. He goes, Eric, Bitcoin is funny money. And he calls me a couple months ago and he goes, I'm recommending that all of my clients invest 2 to 5% in cryptocurrency, most specifically Bitcoin. Guys, we're winning this race right now. We're winning this race. The dam is starting to break. And be careful of inflation, right? I think Biden did the greatest disservice to America of any president in history with his inflationary policies. You know who that benefits? That benefits guys like me, right? It benefits guys with hard assets. Why? Because if a 2x4 used to cost $3 and now a 2x4 costs $12, if you have a home and you've got 10,000 2x4s in it, congratulations, the price of your house just went up by $40,000, right? It's very simple math, right? If you own a lot of 2x4s, if you own a lot of steel, and the price of those commodities goes out massively, you know who that benefits? That benefits the person who owns hard assets. You know who that absolutely crushes? That crushes the young guy, the young girl who just came out of school and is trying to build up the American dream, and shame on him for allowing it to happen. And honestly, Bitcoin is the solution to so much of it. I think we're gonna have monumental growth. I believe in it with every ounce of my soul. And if you can put your money in it versus putting it in what are you gonna put it in? Munis, treasuries where you're probably going backward. All of a sudden you can have real yield. You can really save. You can apply it to your 401ks. Your 401ks can actually become something meaningful over time. I mean, wow, what financial freedom does that give you? And then not just that, how about the actual access to capital that you deserve? You go to JP Morgan and you want to take out a loan. You could be sitting there for 120 days going through a know your customer, versus we're on the precipice of being easily able to borrow against your holdings. Money that you have, assets that you have. You have $100,000 worth of Bitcoin, you go and you can borrow 80% of it. Right? You can take an asset that's appreciating on average at that 60 to 70% that we see year over year, and you can borrow off an asset that continues to appreciate. So you can buy your first home, or you can start your first business, or you can try and live the American dream, or you can, buy something that you've always wanted. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that financial freedom? Go to JP Morgan and try and do that. Good luck. They'll laugh at you. They'll laugh at you unless you want hundreds of millions of dollars from them and you've got a last name like ours. Right? And that's not financial freedom. In fact, I truly believe that cryptocurrency is financial freedom to the masses that's never existed before and have only existed to a very select few. It's been incredibly punitive, and I think Bitcoin and I think the entire crypto industry is going to change that in a massive way. So there's no person in the world that wants to see this industry beat the big banks more than I do. And I think Bitcoin's going to lead the way, and I think we're really on the front end of a great financial revolution.
We are unfortunately out of time, gentlemen, but I do have one question to ask here to send us out. So, Eric, freedom has come up multiple times in this conversation. You guys could have named the company anything that you wanted, but you named it American Bitcoin. Why? What does that mean to you?
Well, because we freaking love Bitcoin, and we absolutely adore America, right? So American Bitcoin. And by the way, it was actually this guy right here. So we're having, I freaking love this guy. I love this guy. Can you become our cheerleader for American Bitcoin? Because this is our kind of energy. I love it.
You could stop it.
So we're sitting there, meal at an Italian restaurant. We go, what are we calling this thing? And I said, it has to have 2 words in it. It has to have America, and it has to be Bitcoin. And he goes, how about we call it American Bitcoin?
Just repeated your words.
About 5 minutes later, we spent a lot of money doing it, but we bought the website, we registered the ticker symbol, and how cool is ABTC on the NASDAQ? ABTC. I think it's the first ticker symbol on the NASDAQ, and I think we're going to be the greatest company of all. So, guys, great things ahead, and 2 of the most talented people you've ever seen in your entire lives right here, and I'm incredibly proud to be partnered with them.
All right, give it up for this incredible panel, everybody. American Bitcoin.